All right, let's dive into something that's both brilliant and, let's be honest, sometimes a little maddening. We're talking about the US government, a system that was actually designed for a constant power struggle. I mean, think about that for a second. What if a government was built to argue with itself? It sounds like a recipe for chaos, right? But what if that internal conflict, that friction, isn't a bug in the system? What if it's the most important feature? That's what we're going to unpack today.
The key phrase to keep in your head is dynamic interaction. This isn't about everyone holding hands and getting along. Nope. It's about a constant push and pull, a tug of war that's baked right into the DNA of the government.
So, to really get this struggle, you first have to meet the teams. Think of them as three separate players in a very high-stakes game, each with its own rulebook and its own set of goals. On the surface, it looks pretty simple. You've got the legislative branch, that's Congress. Their job is to make the laws. Then there's the executive branch, headed by the president, and they enforce those laws. And finally, the judicial branch, the courts. They get to interpret what those laws actually mean. But these simple job descriptions, they are designed to put these three branches on a collision course.
So how do you manage all this built-in conflict? Well, you do it with a really clever set of rules we call checks and balances. These are the official power moves that each branch can use against the others to keep them in line.
And the goal here isn't to stop government from working. It's to stop any one part of the government from becoming all-powerful. It means each branch has a way to say, hold on a minute to the others, a block, a countermove, a way to check their power. So let's look at a classic matchup. Congress works for months, they finally pass a bill they're really proud of, but the president hates it. And bam, slaps it with a veto. You think it's game over, but it's not. If Congress can get a 2/3 majority in both the House and the Senate, they can override that veto. It's a huge legislative counterpunch. It's them saying, look, we're doing this with or without you. Now this is a fascinating long game. The president gets to pick federal judges, which can shape the courts for generations. But here's the check. Once that judge is in, they're in for life. The president can't just fire them because they made a decision he doesn't like. That's a critical piece of the puzzle that ensures the courts can stay independent. And what about the court's biggest power move? They can look at a law that Congress passed and the president signed and just say, nope, this is unconstitutional, basically wiping it off the books. But even that has a counter. It is a massive, difficult process, but Congress has the power to try and amend the Constitution itself, to literally change the rules of the game. This whole push and pull thing really plays out in foreign policy, and even just staffing the government. The president can nominate ambassadors and negotiate treaties with other countries, but he can't do it solo. He needs the Senate to say yes. This forces both branches to come to some kind of agreement on who represents America and what promises we make to the world. And then we get to Congress's, well, you could call it their nuclear option, impeachment. If a president or a federal judge is believed to have committed a serious crime, the legislative branch can actually put them on trial and potentially remove them from office. It is the ultimate check on the power of any single individual. And finally, there's a more subtle but constant check that the judiciary has. Congress can write a law, the president can enforce it, but at the end of the day, it's the courts who decide what the words in that law actually mean out in the real world. That power of interpretation can totally change the impact of a law, sometimes years after it was written. But here's the thing, the three branches aren't just playing this game in a quiet room by themselves. There are all these other powerful forces on the sidelines that can completely change how this power struggle plays out. I mean, think about it. Political parties can either unite the legislative and executive branches, or they can cause even more gridlock. Huge media stories can shape public opinion, which puts pressure on one branch to act. And you have powerful interest groups constantly lobbying and trying to influence the players on the field. So all these outside pressures mean that the balance of power is never, ever static. It is always shifting, which makes this whole designed conflict even more complicated and, frankly, unpredictable. So that brings us to the big question. Why? Why would you design a system that seems built for conflict and gridlock? What is the point of this never-ending game? And it all comes back to that phrase we started with, dynamic interaction. The struggle itself, that's the whole point. The messy, difficult process is the product. It's supposed to be hard. You see, the goal was never for one branch to score a final decisive victory. The whole idea is that their constant competition, their ambition fighting against each other's ambition, that acts as a guardrail. It protects our liberty by making it incredibly difficult for any one person or any one group to get total control. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In a game with so many rules, so many players, and so many outside forces, can the balance of power ever really be perfectly equal? Or is one branch always, even just a little bit, holding the upper hand? Thanks for joining this explainer.